Good evening, everybody, and welcome to People Always Ask. This is the Love Dating Singles Edition, and this is really particularly for those of us who are out here on the scene, in the millennial scene, also in the pandemic, right? Some people are lonely. We want to get connected, right? And it's not always easy to date. It can be one of the most stressful parts of your day if you're not doing it right. So people always ask me, how can I stress less about dating and maybe even enjoy dating? Because it can be a mess. And one of the things that's really tough about it is even those dating apps can change the way that you approach dating altogether, because we're looking at things that we would never be looking at if we were more comfortable and we were more open. And so we're just here to talk about how to make dating enjoyable and maybe rewarding and maybe actually lead to something that feels like a good relationship for you, if that's what your goals are. I'm not pushing any particular structure on anybody. So let's start at step number one. Now, we're going to go through about 9 different things. They're not all unrelated. So I just want to list them out so you guys are really clear. How the hell can I do this dating thing and make it feel like, worth it, without me just being stressed out and being like, you know what, F it, forget everybody because they're all trash, throw them all away. And so let's start at step number 1. Start with radical self-love, which means know your story, own it with compassion. A lot of people don't really fully own the fact that they have parts that are not pretty. They have things that trigger them. They have things that in their history make them who they are, right? And so good, bad, in between, when you're dating, you have to be comfortable with all of you. Because if you get triggered, if you get hurt, if something comes up for you, you're going to need to be able to really have compassion for the fact that you need what you need. It is what it is. And now you got to share this with another person. And so before we can really move to this place of being comfortable sharing ourselves with other people, we actually have to get over some of the shame of even sitting with ourselves. A lot of us actually have parts of ourselves that we don't really think, if other people saw them, would like that part, right? And so if it goes well, this step is going to become really important, right? Because if you are worried about being all of yourself, or you're worried that you're not good enough, and you're not clear about the history that you have, and that's what's going to come up for you if you date anybody, then what's going to inevitably happen is you're going to run into a self-fulfilling prophecy where, because you don't own your story and because you don't have enough compassion with yourself to really own it, you can't let somebody else love you the way that you really should be loved. And you're not showing them what you need or your vulnerability. You're not really being the version of yourself that can really achieve happiness. And because of that, you're not going to get very far with this dating thing. You might go through the motions. You might really get to sleep with a bunch of people, but the connection part of this is going to feel off because it is off. And that's because they're not connecting with the authentic you. What they're connecting with is sort of this performance that you're putting on when you date people, which you might find is not the same person that shows up with friends, where people really love you and that you feel comfortable with. And so the first place to start is to make sure that whoever's going on these dates is your authentic self. So that means you have to love your whole self so that when they go on a date, it's not just like, oh my God, this is triggering me and I shouldn't feel that way. You could just be honest with yourself, feel what you feel, leave when you need to, right? Self-acceptance is also a really big part of setting boundaries. So if you can't do it, then you're not going to be able to set appropriate boundaries with dating anyway. Maybe you'll push people away too quickly, or you might. So that relates to this next thing. If you can own your history, then you should be able to identify 2 really big things for yourself before you jump in and involve somebody else. The first thing is that you need to identify what likely is going to trigger you. If you've gone through step number 1 and you've kind of looked at your history, you get why you are the way that you are, you have compassion for the story that comes along with just being you, right? If you have compassion for that story, then what now you have to have insight into is that sometimes people are going to trigger that story. They're going to trigger the pain, the abandonment, the rejection, the shame, the embarrassment, the insecurity. Sometimes that's going to happen. If you want to give people a fair shake, you want to be able to be honest about not just what triggers you, but also what's going to help make it better. And so this is where needs come in. Needs are not just what you want. Needs are things that you actually require in order for the worst parts of yourself not to get worse through another person, right? And so all of us might have stressors, triggers, things that in our history, sorry, ooh, they're getting aggressive out there. But in any case, all of us might have things that in our history make us triggered, and we don't have anyone who knows all that except for us. And so we need to sit down with ourselves and really admit, I need stuff from people. If you're the type of person who says, I don't need anything from anyone, then you're lying, because you definitely do. And when I say need, I mean for you to show up as the version of you that's curious and open and compassionate, you need this stuff. Because if you're triggered, you're not going to be in a relationship where you feel good, where you feel embodied and connected. You're going to feel nervous. You're going to sort of feel resentful, or you'll feel defensive all the time. And so your needs mean, let me give you an example. I have anxiety. A lot of people have anxiety. That means that I need to understand there is a situation that can make my anxiety so bad that I could start having panic attacks. I could start acting like somebody I'm not even really normally like. I could become really insecure. I could have a lot of symptoms around my digestion, right? And it's going to happen if I don't get alone time, if I don't get time for my spiritual self to get grounded. It's going to happen if I don't feel comfortable with my partner when I tell the truth about, my needs, right? This is what I need. I need to be able to do these things in order to keep my anxiety in a good place so I can be myself. If a person that I'm with doesn't know that, then we're in a weird place, because I'm expecting them to make me feel good. And we're kind of playing with blinders on. We don't really know what the whole field looks like for you. And so you have to know yourself well enough to say, hey, not only is this going to trigger me, but if it does, here's the history behind it, right? So just so you can have some compassion for where I'm coming from. And so here's what I need from you. And over time, it will get better. Maybe I'll trust you more. I'll feel more comfortable with you. But for now, I might need verbal affirmation, or I might need, for certain things to look a certain way. And we need to meet in the middle. That's fair. If you find yourself feeling uncomfortable telling people your needs, then it's a red flag and you need to stop the situation anyway. Which leads us to point number 3. Don't date unless you're excited about it. It seems so simple, right? Like people will be like, oh, well, dating is good, so you obviously are excited about it. But I can promise you there's people who are watching this or who will watch this that at some point have been dating, and it's not because they really want to date, it's because they feel like they should be dating, right? It's about time to date. I don't want to be alone, that it's hard for people, past a certain age to have kids. So they want to be in a relationship just so they can hurry up that process, right? And so it's difficult. But if you engage in dating that way, you're already starting on the wrong foot, right? So we want to really make sure that if you're going to go on dates, if you're on a dating app, that the people that you're saying yes to, you're not just going, okay, yeah, I'll drag my ass down on a date, right? That you're actually genuinely excited to go out, because in your body, things that are good for you that you really want to do, you can feel. And so we're just going to honor your body, and you're going to lead with your dreams and not your fears. Dream for yourself, if you can imagine it, that there is a partner who will make you excited, who will meet your needs. It might be a little scary. It might be uncomfortable because you're not used to getting your needs met, but you deserve to be excited continually, renewed excitement about dating if you're going to go through the effort and energy of putting yourself out there to date. Because don't tell me you want to dress up, get ready, spend time traveling to wherever you're going, spend time with a person, go through a whole experience, and you're not even excited about it. So really tune in with yourself. And if you're a person who's just going through the motions and dating because that's what you're supposed to do at this age or this time, or because you're who you are, then let's be clear with ourselves about why we're doing what we're doing. And if you don't want to date, don't date. Don't matter what anybody else says. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. And you can feel in your body when you're excited about something, you know what it feels like to want to do something. And so this brings us to the next thing, which is your body keeps the score. Make time to check in with yourself. which means that when you're dating people, every step of the way. So the first place we're starting is, do I want to do this in my body? Does it feel good for me to go out and meet this person? Maybe I'm a little scared, but I'm also feeling excited about it. I feel like I want to do this. Now, what I mean by your body keeps the score, that's the name of a book, sort of notoriously about trauma, but it also is a saying that means your body remembers everything that you go through, and it will tell you what is going on for you, what's being triggered, what's happening, how you're doing. So make time between seeing people and being busy to reflect and take time so that you can really know, hey, when I'm with this person and I feel this way, what was that about? Is that them? What part of that is my history? Right? If I was going to express this need to somebody, would it be worth it? Right? And so these are the kind of things that you want to do in between dating, so that you're not just kind of moving through texting all the time, being anxious, or being really sort of in the game of trying to make sure you don't look like you care too much and all this other stuff. Be authentic with yourself and make sure that you're taking enough space and time that you do know what you feel about the situation. And remember, you do not have to make up your mind right away. It's okay not to know what you want, as long as you're honest about that. Just reflect with that and make sure that you know what's going on and why, right? And what that's about for you. And that's more important in this process than being figured out right away. It doesn't need to be quick, it needs to be right. And so when you're doing this whole thing, really make sure that you're checking in, because if somebody's triggering you, making you feel uncomfortable, insecure, even if you like them, you want to make sure that you're checking in with yourself enough to be able to keep your boundaries straight, to say, hey, I'm able to ask for what I need here comfortably. And if I'm not, can I get there? Because we really want to make sure that when you're dating people, this is for you. You are choosing this relationship. This isn't work. This isn't your family. This is for you. So if you're going to create relationships in your life, really make sure that you're checking in with your body to see, is this relationship something that makes me feel better? Or is it something that makes me feel worse? Because even if I really want it, if it always makes me feel worse, that's not something that I need to keep moving towards. I need to kind of take my space from that. And that's something that you can just sense, because all of your history is right here in your body. So speaking of that, people might be triggering you, and it's not because they are who they are. It's actually because you're over relying on that for fulfillment and all your needs and all your social stuff and all your closeness and intimacy. And what a healthy balance looks like is that when you date, that's a part of your life, but it is not all of your intimate life. Try to balance other close relationships with your dating life, so that if you lose somebody who you were dating, it doesn't feel devastating. The reality that you need to know for yourself, most of us who fear loss, is that you'll be okay. And in order to know that, you have to have other people in your village and other people in your community that make you see and help you reflect the fact that you are okay. Not to mention that you need to have a good relationship with yourself, so that when you take time away, you're able to really connect with what it is that's going on, and how you might best address it, because that's really all that we want to do when we don't feel good, is try to make ourselves feel better. That's actually the key thought there. And if we're too close to dating, we'll be mad at people just for not making us feel better. And it's really not their job, especially not in the early stages. We definitely not their job. In the early stages, you need to move away if they're making you feel too bad, and go towards somebody safer and your other close relationships. So that brings us to the most important point on the list, which is when you're dating, the reason why we had to start with radical self-love and finding out your triggers and your needs is so that you can show up as you. Because a lot of us show up as our dating self. We show up as our highlight reel. We show up as the best good girl or good guy version of us that's going to show up on this date, or cool person or whatever. And maybe we think the person we're supposed to be is a freak who swings off the chandeliers and has wild, freaky fantasies. Or maybe we think we're supposed to be a church girl, or whatever we think we're supposed to be. The problem is that we don't want somebody to love who we're supposed to be. We want somebody to love us, which means good, bad, ugly, or in between. You have to date as you. And you have to be comfortable with all of yourself. You have to have compassion for all of yourself in order to be honest and really see what happens. It's going to take a lot to give people you. Sometimes you're going to be triggered, and it might be embarrassing, right? Because maybe it doesn't make sense, or it's something that isn't a good reaction. you have to have enough compassion for yourself to say, this is just part of my history. This is who I am. Can I be my authentic self and see if this person can step up? And so that brings us to the next part, which is during a conflict, feel your feelings, tell the truth, and see if your partner or partners, depending on what kind of relationships you're having or how you're dating, see if they can step up and just hold space for you. Holding space in the sense that not only do they see what they feel, but they also can see what you feel. And they can see if there's a problem separate from those two things, that neither one of your emotion takes up so much space that it controls the situation, right? But they can step up and give you what you need without giving up all of themselves. That's healthy. And so a lot of times we get caught up in saying, well, we should. We get caught in what I call classically the blame game. We think if someone's more wrong, then we're winning. But realistically, if we want connection, we got to connect. We got to see that if we're triggering other people or they're triggering us, what we are always entitled to. So this is some like reparenting your inner child type stuff, right? I'm about to drop on you real quick. And all that it is that if you are ever entitled to love that feels safe, it is in your most close relationships with people. And so when you're dating somebody, this is a test. See here and now, every time, as much as you can, if you share your vulnerable truth, if you just feel your feelings and tell the truth and stop, and don't over explain yourself, and don't hurt yourself by starting to be insulting or judgmental or being self-deprecating, just stop and see what they do, and see if what they do makes you feel better. Because if it does, it will blow your freaking mind that it's even possible for somebody to step up this way. And that's actually the person you want to keep moving towards, right? Every time that you have that good surprise where you have a tension or a trigger and it comes up and you're worried, but you tell the truth and they step up, that's growth. That's the type of relationship you actually should be seeking. That the conflict makes you feel like you're in a better place. That is the actual purpose of the conflict. And so during this, trying to just make sure that whoever you're with can see you and hear you, because now you know your needs and you love yourself. You want to make sure that they get it. And once they know your needs and you're clear about what you're feeling and you're vulnerable with them, is this person the type of energy and the type of person that can make me feel better when I'm triggered? With the history that I've got, are they capable? And now we're not going to make it like they're a bad person because they're not capable of taking care of you with your history. But what it does mean is you're now responsible for stepping back if they can't step up, right? Because you got other relationships and other people that you could deal with, and you're lovable. And you're not going to take it to a place where you feel unlovable because somebody doesn't know how to love you, right? That's already a story that a lot of us have felt once. Let's not mess up ourselves by repeating our trauma stories of people we're choosing. So the next thing is stay curious. It may seem simple, but a lot of us go into dating guarded. The other day, I was doing a workshop with teenage boys. So that means that it is everybody from the age of like 16 to 19. And they already all agreed that women love to lie. Quote, they love to lie. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a trauma reaction. It's a trauma reaction for two reasons. One, it obviously is an oversimplification of a fear, right? I'm scared that everybody's going to do this, so I'm going to say everybody does it. Now, the other part of it is that it tells me that they've been lied to. They've been betrayed. They felt like this has happened to them. And maybe they don't know why it's happened to them, right? And so the option is either that all women do this or that something's wrong with me. And all of us have that dark side of that thought. If we think something's wrong with men, low key, then we also think that something's wrong. All of us who date men think something's wrong kind of with us sometimes, because how could we not and be dating you, right? And so what we really don't do on dates sometimes, because we're guarded, we're like, ooh, we need to watch out because they're gonna lie, they're gonna try to play me, they're gonna try to do something to take advantage of me. Our distrust comes to the table. And instead of being curious about who they are and if they're a good fit for us and what we would be excited to know about this person, what we're doing is we're assuming that we already know the agenda, right? We already know the agenda, but you're not a mind reader, even when you have a hypothesis. And when I say a hypothesis, I mean an educated guess. So I'm not shortchanging your experience here. You're the expert on your experience, right? So you might have an educated guess. You might know that most people that you meet do this thing or think this way. So we're talking about, listen, you got a valid hypothesis, but even when you think this is true, ask it. Be curious. Don't be the person who doesn't even ask the question and lets it control the entire situation. Because then not only are you not speaking your reality out into the world to make sure that it's real, you're also now putting yourself on the defense, so you're not comfortable. So instead of just being curious and feeling safe with the person, you're on guard for something that you're not even sure is happening. And if you just asked, a lot more people are honest than you might think. Okay, like people's flaws are just right underneath the surface. If you chill, sit back and listen, all you got to do is ask questions. And people generally, if they feel like you're not judging them, which you don't have to be, right? They'll tell the truth. And you can decide what to do with that truth when the date is done or while it's happening. You might go, ooh, and feel the reaction in your body that you don't like something. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly fair to think, oh, I like somebody when I saw them initially. I don't like them now. Whatever, stay curious, right? And even if you think you got it all figured out, try to test your theories out. If it's an educated guess for you and you got a theory that maybe, right, this is true about this guy or this woman, or this them, right? Or this gender nonconforming person. So what do we do, right? We have to ask in order to test our theories out. I know women who think all men cheat. Really, right? And so they let that idea control what happens in their relationship. And without being curious about whether or not that's happening, they leave themselves in a terrible reality that it's going to happen no matter what. And so they prefer the reality that somebody tell them that they're going to treat them poorly, right? Then be treated poorly and have it be hidden, right? And so if that's an insecurity that you're walking around with, rather than testing out your hypothesis, you don't know if it's actually true. It's an educated guess that maybe you think based on your experience all men cheat, right? But if you don't test out the theory, then you're never actually going to know if that was right or if that was a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's why we want you to be really clear about your needs and your triggers in a relationship, because if you're going to walk in the door and need a lot of things to build trust and affirmation that you're going to be okay, right? Then in order for you to stay curious and calm, you need things from people. You need people to give you certain stuff. And so you got to be really clear out of the gate. Yeah, I know this might sound crazy, but this is what I need, so that you can stay curious with them and give them a chance to be themselves too, right? It's not all about me, 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 me. Part of it is just, I want to be able to get this stuff so that you get the version of me that's the best version of me, right? I hate to date and then be like, geez, well, who was that nervous person who showed up? If I had thought about it, I'd have done something else, right? And we want to be that version of ourselves as much as we can when we date. And even curiosity is part of what exists in that part of ourselves, is that I can be curious about who you are, what do you like, what do we want to do, when I feel comfortable with myself and when I feel comfortable with another person. And so if I really feel uncomfortable about something and I have a theory about what it is, I need to ask, right? Even if it's something as simple as, I feel like you came on this date to have sex and I'm looking for something else. Is that true? Ask, be curious, right? You're not a mind reader. You don't know for sure. You might be right. Might be an educated guess and you might be right, but better to get it out on the table and talk about what's happening than pretend it's not in the room. Right? So let's just be curious about it. Don't let things that aren't real and aren't really out on the table yet control what you do. It's causing more stress than it's worth. That's always going to create more stress when you think you know, but you're not asking, you're not addressing, you're not solving it, you're not going anywhere. So what's the point? You just think you're a mind reader and you're stressing yourself out. So last part, honor and be honest about your boundaries. The reason that this is a big deal, and there's a whole nother episode on how to establish boundaries, people always ask, is because it's easy to go, well, I guess maybe that doesn't matter so much because I know it will upset them, or I want to not seem crazy, or I want to make it, I don't want to seem difficult. I don't want to burden them. That's not fair to them. It's easy to tell ourselves things like that when we go on dates and when we're dating people. And the reverse is also true, right? That sometimes we won't do stuff that we're excited about because we really feel like, oh, well, I don't know if I'm good enough or this is going to be worth it. Honor what you're actually feeling. Be honest about when you stop feeling like doing it. Be honest about when you really want to go forward with something. You really can be more clear with yourself about this thing that I'm choosing to do for myself. Does it feel in my body like in an embodied way, I'm excited about choosing to do it? Because it should, right? And so honor your boundaries in the sense that if it stops feeling that way at some point, you need to say something. You need to recognize the consequences of you going further than that, right? So if I don't want to be going on dates to have sex and then I end up having sex with all these people, that's not bad for the person that wants to have sex on all their dates, but it's a problem for me then. And I need to address if I do this with myself, because I'm sacrificing my body and time and energy with this and my spirit. If I do this, what am I actually doing to myself? Because if something in my gut says, I don't want to do this, or if something in my gut says I'm not comfortable with that, or I'm not comfortable with that yet, then that's probably true for a reason. The body keeps the score, right? And so what we really want to be doing in dating is really making sure that if we're not comfortable with something or we're not comfortable with something yet, we are being honest with ourselves, with the other person. Because the worst case that you can get into is that you get into a really close relationship with somebody and you feel like you cannot communicate boundaries or be honest with them about how you feel or how they affect you. Because that's totally a setup for an abusive dynamic where people can take advantage of you really caring more about what they want from you than what you need for yourself. That's never a healthy thing. And a lot of us experience this reality when we're younger. That's like, in order to get what I need to give up everything else that I want, right? I need to be perfect and give all of it up and give all of my emotions up so that way I'll finally get somebody to give me what I need in return. But that's not a healthy relationship that you want in a chosen way. So make sure that no matter what you're focused on, this is why be your authentic self was the most important point in here, right? You're really making sure that your authentic self, all of you with all of your history and all of your dark parts, feels loved. Because if you don't feel comfortable with a person, even if they're not feeling loved, right? You need to feel loved by yourself. I'm talking about this part first. If you're in a situation and it's starting to trigger something about you not feeling good about yourself, you're not being yourself, it's probably a sign that you need to get out. And a boundary always should lie when you notice in your body that you start to feel worse and it's triggering something from your history. Doesn't mean you have to get out totally. Might mean you have to slow down, right? But what you really want to do is be as honest as you can with people because your boundaries are fair. That is just who you are. That's what you come with. And you're going to find another person who comes with their boundaries and their own history. And what is perfectly fair of them is to ask you, hey, can you meet my needs or not? And sometimes they might say something that you can't meet. And that's okay. What we have to trust for ourselves is we have to love ourselves enough to say, I'm better being by myself and loving myself and radically doing that alone than being with somebody who violates my boundaries, makes me feel worse, makes my qualities about myself worse, my depression, my anxiety, my self-doubt, my self-criticism. I'm better being alone. I have to love myself enough to say that than to be in a situation that makes the worst parts of my history feel worse for me, that makes my core wounds feel deeper, right? And so we're looking for people that make us feel better. So the ideal dating situation as you go forward should be a good surprise after a good surprise until the point where you expect that this person is going to feel good for you. And after time, you can trust it. And it might be hard and you're going to be like a baby wobbling because you've never really dated somebody who can meet all your needs and you can be vulnerable with. So you're scared to do it. But the most important part of this is that your body will tell you, is this good? Right? Don't let your theories and your bad messages run what's going on. Try to be connected enough with yourself to date mindfully. And so if you were going to wrap up all of this into a sort of list, this would really be about what people call mindful dating, which is just as you're going, moment by moment, day by day, trigger by trigger, can you be present enough to give yourself what you need and to move in the direction of what feels better? Maybe better feels like you're getting out of there. Maybe better feels like getting a hug from the person that you really need a hug from, right? But you need to be in your body enough to check in, right? And one of the things that we were there saying is that with a partner, you need to find balance. So hopefully in the last 30 minutes, all of you guys have radically accepted some things about your dating life and given yourself permission to say that whoever you date from here on out, that person we all deserve. We're all messed up enough in this pandemic to deserve a person who can make us feel safe. And as far as safety, you can go as far as you can. And when you don't feel safe anymore, go back to your other close relationships, set your boundaries, be clear about your needs, feel your feelings. That's as simple as it is. And it might feel like you need to be somebody else, but the person who's going to be with you that you're going to feel best with, it's not going to take a lot of being someone else for them to love you. The authentic version of you is going to be able to get that love. And that's really what you want. You want to feel so comfortable with the idea that you're good, bad, and ugly with a person or being loved that you actually feel more at ease being yourself. And for those of us who have really scary attachment histories where people have abused us, hurt us, taken advantage of us, neglected us, we have to date this way. We have to date mindfully, or else our history is going to overcome the present. If we don't date based on what makes us feel good and what makes us feel better, with clear boundaries, with our needs established, with people who can meet those needs when we establish what they are, then what ends up happening is we replay our trauma. And so for all of us, if we want to stress less, we need to do something different than the stories that hurt us. We have to be ready for a surprise, for a different expectation. And if we get the same thing, we have to be calm enough to walk away and not argue and fight and do too much. Love ourselves enough to say, hey, their history and my history don't match. This is not going to work out for me. I know how to take care of myself. I'm going to go do that. Honor and be honest about your boundaries. If somebody crosses them sometimes, one too many times, it's time to make your exit. It's time to fire some people. All right, y'all. Well, that is it for this beautiful Thursday evening. Hopefully, I'll catch you next time here on People Always Ask. And as always, I'm going to draw a card just to wrap up this episode and hide this little point here. We have gone through a whole journey in this video, so please do go back and go from steps 1 through step 9, because each and every one of them are really things that I repeat to people who pay good money to be reminded of them every single time that they get back on these apps and they feel themselves getting triggered, because dating can be triggering all by itself. So here we go. Today, we are getting the Magician card. And this is not the Dark Magician card, so that means we're not using our powers for evil right now. We're using them for good. And the biggest takeaways from the Light Magician is that if you believe in yourself and the universe, you have the ability to make things happen. Concentrated attention and action can make things happen for you, right? And so with the Magician card, the reminder is always that the magic that you have to manifest things for yourself is always there if you're not blocked, right? And so each of us has a different ability to manifest our future that we want, including the relationship that we want, but we have to be clear about what it is that we're trying to use ourselves to create. Are we just creating a relationship with our powers, right, that defends us and protect us from our worries? Or are we using our powers to create the relationship we really dream about? Because we all have, within every conflict we have about love and relationships, we have a dream of the relationship we want, right? Of all the things we complain about, we know on some level that we really have a dream we wish we could have. And so the magician reminds us that if we focus our attention as we sort of connect sort of to our higher selves, what we want and what we feel will manifest around us, right? In terms of our relationships. Stay true to your boundaries, stay true to yourself. And that's the type of love that you'll be able to receive. Love that is true to you and true to your boundaries and that respects you and that helps you grow, right? That's possible for all of us if we use our light magician inside of us to manifest it using all of our inner knowing, right? Not our fears. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful evening. And thank you for joining me on Young Boss Media for People Always Ask.